What's up, guys? Justin here with TheSketchUpEssentials.com, back with another SketchUp layout tutorial for you. So in this video, we're going to continue working on our apartment model, which is the model that we started off creating last week, where we're actually modeling an entire apartment in order to be able to do things like render it and create presentations from it and that sort of thing. Before I get started, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon. Patreon, as you know, is the crowdfunding support website where you can support creators that you like on YouTube. If you're interested in supporting the show, if you like what I'm doing here, every little bit of support that I get on there goes towards buying new extensions and expanding the show and bringing you more interesting things. So if you want to check that out, there's a link down in the notes below, or you can visit patreon.com/TheSketchUpEssentials. Now let's go ahead and just jump into it. Alright, so last week we started creating our model, and what we did is we modeled our interior and our exterior walls. And so this week I want to come in and start modeling the openings, including the walls, including the doors and the exterior windows and all of that different kind of stuff. And so the way that we're going to do that is it's important that you group this properly, because when we bring this into layout, sometimes you're going to want to create different line weights for your different openings. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure we model out our swings properly, and that we get our doors modeled as well. So what you need to think about when you're modeling doors is you need to remember that when you take this into layout, what you're going to do is you're going to create a section cut view that looks at your model from top down, and you're going to turn the perspective off so that you get a straight up and down view of your different walls. You can see how our walls get kind of a cut through on them, and then the doors will be in here as well. So we need to model these doors out so they look a certain way when they're sectioned. And then we also need to be able to put them on a different layer than everything else, because we're going to need to do that in order to create our different line weights. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to come in and I want to model a door. And so you can pick any of these openings. In this case, I'm going to pick this door into this master bedroom. And there's a few different ways that you can model your door. You can start off, and if you want, you can just draw a rectangle across this face. And then you can kind of push-pull your door to give it some thickness. So, and one of the things you need to think about is if you actually want to show the door frames as a part of your section cut. So what you could do is you could come in here and you could model this with the actual door frame itself around the opening, and so that would be an actual frame that goes all the way around the opening, and then the door would be inside of that. And there's a couple different ways that you could do that. And you probably want to do that at least to a certain degree, just so that your doors look kind of realistic. But the other thing you could do is you could just kind of model your door into this space and then draw the swing and just be done with it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rectangle tool to draw basically a door across this face, and then I'm going to use the offset tool to create my frame. And so we'll go ahead and assume that I've got probably a 2-inch jamb in here, and then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to, once I use the offset tool to offset that by 2 inches, I'm going to erase this line over here. And so if I look on this back side, what I have right now is I have a door shape and I have a frame shape, and we just kind of need to extrude those so that they have thickness. And so you can see how all I did is I took that frame and I just extruded it to this front face. Then I'm going to take my door and I'm going to extrude it probably halfway. So I'm going to assume this is a 1.5-inch thick door. So now, and one thing you may have to deal with when you do this is you probably, when you extrude these, need to do it in create new face mode. And so you're just going to use the push-pull tool, but you're going to tap the control key, and you can see how when I use the control key, it's going to create a new face instead of extruding that face on the back side, so that you can still use that. So, and do the same thing on your door, tap the control key and then push-pull this 1.5 inches. Now you have your door in here, and you can flip these faces on the back side. So you can just reverse the faces so that the correct faces are facing out. Well, now you've got your general door shape in here. And so now what we want to do is we want to put that in a group. And so we're just going to drag our mouse across it, right click, and we're just going to click make group. And if you remember, we've been using our outliner in here to keep our model organized. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to just call this door for right now. And so I just have a door group in here at the moment. And in a second, we're going to create a layer to affect the visibilities in here. But now what you need to think about is when you're working with these doors and you do like a section cut through it, if you think about looking at the plan view of this door, what you don't have is you don't have this swing coming outward. So when you create a two-dimensional plan, it's not actually going to show up. And so what we want to do is we want to actually go back inside this group and model our swing. And so we're going to model our swing by double-clicking inside this group. And I'm actually going to model it outside the group and then paste it in place. So I'm just going to model my door here. We'll say it's a 1.5 inch thick door. So we'll model our door out and then we'll just draw an arc for our swing. So now when I come in here and I create a top-down view and I use my section cut, my door swing is going to show up in here. So, but we also don't want our swings showing up in our actual like presentation views. Like you don't want a bunch of door swings showing up in here when you're doing an actual interior design type presentation. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put that inside of this model. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to select this, I'm going to right click on it, I'm going to make it a group, and we're going to call that swing. And you can see how right now our door and our swing are in different groups. So what I'm going to do is you can either copy this or cut this and then paste it in place. Or you can do what I'm going to do. I'm just going to click and drag this inside my outliner right into my door object. So now if I double click in here, my door swing group is inside this object. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on different layers. And so what I have is, remember I have two different groups and we've been using layers to adjust our actual visibilities. And so we're going to create two different layers for these two different things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit plus and we're going to create a layer called architectural doors. And so the architectural doors is going to be the layer that you're going to be able to use to turn your doors on and off in your model. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this group and then I'm going to go up to my tray and we're going to put that in the doors layer. And so now I can turn my door on and off. And so that's going to be important because later on what we're going to do is we're going to be able to turn our walls on and off and leave our doors on and off. And so that way we'll have all of our doors on their own layer. We can export those to layout and we can give them a separate line weight. And so then the other thing we're going to do, because we want to be able to turn these swings off. And so what you're going to do is you're going to add another layer and you're just going to call that CONC for conceptual. And we'll call that door swings. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our door swings and we'll put them on the door swings layer. And so that way when you're working in here and you want to use your presentation view, you can just turn your door swings on and off by turning this layer on and off. And so I'm going to go through real quick and add the rest of my doors in here, and I'm going to speed this up a whole bunch. I'm just going to, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to copy paste this door and modify it most of the time in order to make everything fit. So instead of having to remodel the geometry, if I make a copy of this door like this, you can see how that's going to show up in here in my groups. And everything will be in there. The door swings will be on the correct layer already because I'm making a copy of something I already set up properly. And so the other thing you could do if you wanted to is you could make these components for all the doors that were actually the same size. Some of these doors are going to be different size, but you could, if you made it components, then if you needed to go back and make a change, you could do that on a lot of different doors at once. Alright, so one thing I want to note real quick is, if you notice, I brought this door in, and as of right now it's too big for this opening, and so there's a real quick trick that you can use in order to adjust this really fast, and it has to do with understanding the way that your geometry is modeled, because right now the way this door is modeled is it has a frame over here, or it has a frame piece on this side, it has a frame running across the top and a frame over here. What you can do is you can just drag across this door piece right here, and you can actually move this, and you can see how your door will actually adjust with your mouse. So you can see how that top frame piece moves with it as well, because you're just moving all of this geometry is all that you're doing. And we'll fix our swing in a second. But you can see how I can just drag this over, and my frame stays the same thickness because I selected all of this geometry, and this just kind of adjusts with it. So you can use the move tool really quickly in order to do that. And you may have to come back in here and remodel your swing, which is no big deal. It's not a giant extra piece of work or anything like that. Alright, so now I have all my doors modeled. I haven't modeled the upstairs area quite yet. We'll come in and model that a little bit later. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in and I'm going to model the same thing with my windows. And so I'm just going to do the same thing. And what I'm doing, because I've already modeled my exterior walls, is I'm just drawing guides where the exterior windows are, because you can see how when I turn my walls on, I can't see where those are marked up. That might have been something I should have done a little bit differently when I first modeled it, but it's not the end of the world. It's pretty easy to come in here and fix. And so all I'm doing is I'm just drawing guidelines along the window itself where the window would be, and then I'm coming back in and modeling my actual window openings. And so once I model those guides, it gets really easy to come in here and do that. And then the only other thing is, if windows need to be centered in wall pieces like this one, the other thing you can do, and in this case it doesn't really matter because you can actually see the window here, but you could start from, you could go ahead, whoops, and you could draw a guide right at your midpoint, or like a little line segment off of your midpoint, just to kind of indicate where that is. And then you could come in here and draw your guides this way. Alright, so once I get my guides drawn, what I can do is I can just come in here and I can start modeling this window on face. And so what you can do is you can use the guide creation, or you can use the tape measure tool in guide creation mode to mark what you want the heights of your windows to be. So in this case, let's say I want this to be 2 foot 6 inches off the ground, and then I want the top of this to be, we'll call it 7 feet high. So you can just come in here and you can create guides, and then it gets really easy to kind of rough out your model shape. So you can see how I can just kind of use inferencing to kind of rough out the size of these windows. So, and in this particular case, I could take this one and just copy it across. Or actually, I'll do that in a minute because I'm going to make this a component. And with our windows, what we're going to do is we're just going to model them using the offset tool. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to draw. I'm just going to draw across this face, and then I'm just going to use the offset tool to adjust kind of the thickness of these jambs. So in this case, we'll go ahead and just call them 2-inch jambs. So all I'm doing is I'm just offsetting this 2 inches on each one of these, and we're going to have to do a little bit of adjustment. In fact, what I might do is, instead of drawing the crosses all the way across this, I'm just going to do my 2-inch offset here, and then I'm just going to draw my jambs in. So I'm just going to move this. I'm going to make a copy of this up 1 inch, down 2 inches, and then we'll do the same thing on each side down here. So I'm just going to move, or I'm going to make a copy of this over 1 inch, and then I'll make another copy of it 2 inches, and then we can just select all of this and use the move tool in copy mode to draw it straight up. And then you can just erase out your extra pieces in here, and then you can push pull this piece back. And one thing that might help right now is to turn your exterior walls off. We're going to come back in and cut our hole there in a minute, though you probably want to push pull your frame piece to the back side of this just to give it depth real quick, so you can see how now that has depth. And then we'll push pull each one of these back, probably, if the overall thickness is 3 5/8 inches, we'll push this back, we'll call it 1.5 inches for right now, and then I'm just going to double click in order to push pull that back and forth. And so now if we take a look at this through a section cut, it's always a good idea to just kind of take a section cut through and take a look at this and see if you like the way that it looks. I actually do. In this window, I think that kind of gives me what I want. I'm not figuring any kind of double pane or anything like that. So if you take a look, cutting it through, you can see how this is a really good section cut for a plan view. And so once you kind of create that, there's a couple different things that you're going to need to do. The first is you can turn your exterior wall back on, and you're just going to have to go inside your walls group and just kind of cut this opening out. So I just drew a face across this, and then I pulled it to the back side. Well, now my window shows up in there. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and select this, and we'll right click on it, we'll make it a group. And remember to keep everything organized as you go. We're just going to call this exterior window, and you can give it a width if you want, just so you know what you're talking about. But then we're just going to use the move tool in copy mode to create a copy of it across the way here. And then same thing, where we'll just come in and we'll cut our opening in the exterior wall using the push pull tool, and then we'll just model our last window real quick. Alright, so now we can come back in here and we can erase out all the guides that we created. We don't really need those anymore. And so what we've got is we've got all our interior and doors and windows modeled. And the one thing I didn't do, or actually probably two things that I didn't do. The first thing is I haven't been grouping my doors as I go, and I like to do that just to keep everything kind of organized, because you can see how the more doors you get in here, the more stuff you have in your outliner. Well, all I want to do is I want to take all of that and I just want to select it all. So I just clicked on one of these and then did a shift click, and so now all of these are selected. I'm just going to right click on this and I'm going to make these a group, and I'm just going to call this group doors. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my windows. I'm going to select all of them, I'm going to right click, make group, and I'm going to make them windows. So, and then the thing we're going to want to do with windows, and I think you can probably either put this upper level group on a layer or the individual windows. I don't think that it matters that much, but we're going to go ahead and create a layer for our windows. So we'll just go into layers, hit a plus, type in arch or architectural dash windows. And so we'll just take that group and we'll just put it on the windows layer. So now we're at a point where we can turn our doors on and off, our exterior and interior walls on and off, our windows, and our door swings. So now we can kind of come through, and you can see I'm always kind of checking with the section cut tool to see how everything looks, but now we can kind of come through, just double check and make sure everything's working the way that we want it to. So you can see how those windows have a nice section cut in them, where you can see how when that section cut's on or active, those doors and those windows have a nice look to them so that they're going to show up well on our floor plan. So in the next video, I think we're going to go through and we're going to start adding our cabinets and our furniture and that sort of thing. We may start setting up some views for layout as well. So leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought. Is this helpful to you? Do you like the way that I'm walking you through this? I just love having that SketchUp conversation with you guys. If you like this video, please remember to click that like button down below. If you're new around here, remember to click that subscribe button for new SketchUp content every week. If you like what I'm doing in this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Every little bit helps, even if it's only $1 a month. But in any case, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.